Okay, I'd like to call to order this Ways and Means Committee meeting of Tuesday, April 5th. Roll call, please. I'm here.
Excuse.
Here.
Oh, I'm here.
Here.
There. Motion to excuse Commissioners Krieger and Radke, please.
Support.
Okay, moved and supported. Any discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Perfect. Are there any changes to the agenda? We do have a couple updates. There are revised resolutions for the animal shelter request and also a correction with item H for the lost revenue. So I have no other changes or corrections.
Motion to whatever you said.
Okay.
Support.
Moved and supported to accept the agenda as amended. Any discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Okay, motion carried. Is there a motion for approval of the minutes of March 1st,
So moved.
2022?
Support.
Moved and supported. Any discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carried. Okay, item 6, public input. For anyone wishing to speak to the committee, please go to the podium. I believe there's a pad to write your name and address, and please limit your comments to 5 minutes or less.
Good afternoon. Can you hear okay? Close enough? Okay. Kind of like when I'm at church. My name is Deb Hartley Bullock, and yep, I'm a Bay City brat, born at Mercy Hospital just like Madonna. I don't live in Bay City right now, Bay County, but I will when I retire. I'm fortunate enough to work in Bay City, Saginaw, and Midlands, and I'm fortunate enough to be able to call on the animal shelters in our Great Lakes Bay area. I want to share an incident with you to maybe bring attention to a big need in Bay City and Bay County right now. On January 11th, I had to put down my best friend. My dog was 20 years old, a Gordon Setter. I had Gracie for 16 years. I adopted her from a shelter, and she was a wonderful pet. My husband and I were fortunate enough, we could afford the $384 that it cost us to book the time at a vet, to have her put down in a very humane, relaxed atmosphere, in a private room where Tom and I could cry our eyes out and not be embarrassed because we're sitting in a lobby or around other people. Broken hearts. Oh God, it was so hard to say goodbye, but it was also so necessary. It will always be necessary to euthanize some animals. Now, I bet all of you were raised just like me. You were taught that charity begins at home. And there's always going to be a time and a need that you're going to have to provide for those that cannot provide for themselves. And that's our animals. And that's why there is such a need to have a functioning, good animal shelter. A week after Gracie went across the bridge, Betty White died. Oh my gosh, the biggest animal advocate that America had. And there was a movement, a whole big movement to support your local shelter. Tom said, no, you don't go anywhere, you go to Bay. Take $100, write a $100 check, we're going to do that in memory of Betty White. So I did, I stopped at Bay and they buzzed me in. And I walk in, and there are two people with their fur baby, crying their eyes out. And I know they're there to euthanize their pet. And because there's no room in that place you name and call a shelter, there they were in a lobby crying, unable to have the privacy that I at least could afford to have. An employee did come back, and there were words between them because that employee had no choice but to say, I have to take the dog and take them back, and they're going, no, we're going to be with our loved one. I cried my eyes out. I embarrassed myself writing that check. I could not get out of there quick enough, and waited a day until I stopped crying so hard to call my county executive and say, I'm so mad this happened, it shouldn't be happening. And of course, talked with Greg. But after I stopped crying about it, then I really did get mad about it. I am so proud to tell people I'm from Bay City. I am. I promote this community all that I can. I'm proud of the tall ships, the fireworks, the River of Time that's coming back, the Rib Fest that's coming back. I am so proud to be part of this. But after what I saw, I'm ashamed. Our animals, their family, to many of us, deserve better than this. They're in a building never ever meant to be a shelter. These volunteers and Craig, I don't know how they do and accomplish what they do because it isn't right. We're better than this. Is it going to cost a little bit of money? Of course, everything does. But it's time we look at what isn't out front. They don't get the PR and the crowd of the tall ships or the fireworks, but they're there and there's a need because many of us love our pets like family. Gracie was family to me. So please work with Greg, do what's right for Bay City so we can be proud of our animal shelter. There's such a need here. I trust you'll do the right thing. Thank you for your time.
Thank you. Anybody else? Okay, petitions and communications. Grant application supporting, seeking authorization to make an application for various grants of support treatment court services.
So moved.
Support.
Moved and supported. Is there any discussion? Roll call? I'm sorry. All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carried. Item B, community correction vendor agreements.
So moved.
Support.
Moved and supported. Any discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carried. Item C, building and grounds, seeking support to purchase a skid steer.
So moved.
Support.
Moved and supported. Any discussion? Mr. Herrick.
Thank you. Just for anybody who might be watching on TV, since I just found out, I don't know why I never knew this before, what a skid steer was. So everybody in the rest of the county that's looking at this, it's a bobcat, which I did not, just another term for a bobcat is a skid steer, which I never knew. So I'm still learning, even at my ripe old age. So, but it was just, I just kept saying, what is this thing? You know, so but at least I know now. But that's what it is. It's a bobcat.
Okay.
That's all.
Thank you. Anybody else? Okay. All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carried. Okay, C2, the seeking approval to purchase a generator for the juvenile home.
So moved.
Support.
Moved and supported. Any discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carried. Item C, the natural gas pooled prices. So currently seeking approval for a 3-year contract with Constellation New Energy.
So moved.
Support.
Moved and supported. Any discussion? Okay. All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carried. Department on Aging, an MOU for the Project Fresh Market Fresh.
So moved.
Support.
Moved and supported. Any discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carried. Item E, the Administrative Services seeking funding for architect services for the animal shelter.
So moved.
Support.
Moved and, wait. Can I backtrack? Can we just rewind for a minute? Don't we first have to request the waiver?
The waiver is actually part of the resolution.
So we're good?
Yep.
Okay, sorry.
Yep, you're good.
Okay, I'm sorry. Vaughn?
So in response to one of our public comments, I think we're looking at moving ahead on it. This is the first
Right.
steps, I would believe, of the process of doing some upgrading. I don't know if Craig wants to elaborate a little bit more, or...
I think it's a great idea. You want to talk about this a minute?
Absolutely. Thank you, Madam Chair. So what this is, you're right, Commissioner Begic, this would be the initial process to have an architect come in, do an evaluation of the building, also of the community. In the sense, he would look at the intake of animals, how many we get, what the trend has been for the past few years, do basically like a projection, and look at the building and see what we can do. And in communicating with him, which I have a few times since he's submitted a proposal, he does firmly, he does believe that we have a good backbone. So it doesn't sound like it would have to be something, it doesn't sound like the final project would be like what it was in Saginaw, where it was an entirely new build. It sounds like we can utilize what we have, maybe do some retrofitting additions and those types of things to upgrade it. So I don't think it'll be as in-depth of a project, but certainly when sending him pictures and in conversation, it's stressful right now over there with the level of animals that we're getting. So this would be a nice first step to see what the need would be.
Is part of that, Craig, to address the noise?
Absolutely. That would definitely be an account. We have one main, and if you've been to our shelter, like the dogs, for instance, they're basically in a big L-shaped room. And the level of noise we had it measured and it came in at 98 decibels, which it's pretty, that's getting loud for sustained periods of time that could, impact, somebody's hearing long term, So we, because there's that many dogs in there. And so when you look at new shelters, you could look at designing and, splitting that room up into, 2 or 3 rooms, for instance, and reduce that noise. But I'm not an architect, so how to do that would certainly, rely on him. But in communicating with him, he seemed to be in the same thought process.
Okay. Mr. Barsha?
Yes, and I'd like to say, yeah, the decibel measurements are very loud where the dogs are housed in their cages, and makes it difficult for somebody looking for a dog to adopt, because once one starts singing, they all do. And it gets very loud, and they're excited. And I think sometimes people wonder if that's, if that behavior will continue if they adopt the animal. One other point, since we couldn't respond to Deb, who was a former member of my congressional staff, worked in the Bay City office for 10 years, and she has, as you can tell, a heart for animals. And she did encounter some people who weren't able to go back to be with their animal when it was euthanized. And I know some time ago I talked about it would be nice to the staff, it would be nice if we had a quiet room where people could be with them while they're euthanized. Typically, they get a sedative, and then in some cases a painkiller, and then the final shot to the heart that puts them down. But I know I had an experience in, I think it was 2007 with Bay County Animal Shelter, and I had a cat put down, and they put her in the squeeze box, I guess, but I wasn't allowed to be with her, and I kind of wanted to be. She was a 20-year-old cat, and unfortunately declawed, but the staff at that time told me it was too dangerous to put her down. But I said, well, she didn't have claws, and I was told if they allowed me into the back room with the pet that they'd all be fired or something. So, but that's something we can look at going forward. If we ever make any improvements to the animal shelter, it would be nice, because people, inevitably, if an animal's suffering, it has to be put down. But it's similar to not being with your loved one when they pass, during COVID in the hospitals and stuff. So that's something just to think about as we go forward and see what improvements we might be able to make over there. And incidentally, Craig, if at this time would be appropriate, maybe, Craig, you could talk about the Roberts Fellow students who last Saturday had a carnival for the cattery and raised almost $1,000, a little over $1,000. So we had about 25 students come out and volunteer, and they raised some good money. And it may be more money, because I understand that maybe online contributions still to be collected. So.
Excellent. Any other questions? All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carried. The 2022 preliminary report for equalization.
So moved.
Support.
Any discussion? Mr. Coonan?
Talking to Kelly, she provides me with lots of good information. we've just got nothing but good news coming our way revenue-wise. So we'll have in '23, I would guess, 4.5% increase in revenue for property
Yes,
taxes.
the preliminary report is not as accurate as I would have liked it, but I didn't have Bay City or monitoring at that time. So looking forward, it is a 4.45% increase for taxable value, so taxes will be raised.
And we
Revenue will be
attribute,
generated.
Yes.
and that's attributed to what?
Housing market, commercial businesses, marijuana facilities. However, if you'll notice on your report, the industrial did go down. That's based on the WEDOC facility being phased out.
Sure.
Yeah.
Okay. Any other questions or comments?
Thank you, Kelly.
Mr.
I'd just
Varsha?
like to thank Kelly for the great job her and the staff are doing on our equalization process, and just mention to the board, if we could do something with that second floor room, we'd like to make it a little more professional for our equalization staff, right, Kelly? And
That
I'm
would
not
be
sure, it wouldn't be a very expensive project, but if we had our buildings and grounds folks work on it, it hopefully would be a reasonable cost to maybe separate. We've got all those 21 supervisors' chairs in there, and they're anchored right down into the floor. And I was thinking maybe we could invite some of the families that would like to maybe keep one of those supervisors' chairs for an heirloom, or maybe make some available to the Bay County Museum or something else, to see what we could do. But it is kind of an unpleasant, big cavernous room with a lot of stuff stored in there. And
It would be very nice to get rid of some of that and open up the space.
Yeah, and you have frequent visitors to your office, and it
We
would,
do.
I think, would do a lot for the morale of the staff and also for the public.
I agree.
Thank you, Kelly.
Thank you. That was moved and supported. All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carried. Moving on to item H, is there a motion to receive the general fund equity?
So moved.
What did I miss?
G.
Payables.
Oh,
Got to pay the bills.
okay. How about item G? Is there a motion to approve payables?
So moved. Support.
Moved and supported. Any discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carried. Okay, now item H. Is there a motion to receive the general fund equity?
Support.
Moved and supported. Any discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carried. Is there a motion to receive the Executive Directive 2007-11?
So moved. Support.
Moved and supported. Any discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carried. Item H3, a motion to receive the annual summary purchasing report.
So moved. Support.
Moved and supported. Any discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carried. Item H4, the Bay County's replacement for lost revenue under the ARPA Act.
So moved. Support.
Moved and supported. Chris, would you like to talk about this for a hot minute?
Sure. Kind of a really high level.
Yes,
to understand
perfect.
it. Yeah. So right now we have ARPA funds, which everyone is aware of, up to and includes the $20 million. And all of those funds can be dedicated towards ARPA approved projects. The projects that have been approved currently and other ones that we've been looking at. What this is, the legislation allows for the replacement of lost revenue for municipalities. And so there's two different ways to formulate that. One is to take a standard fee, a standard allotment of $10 million, and the other is to use a 5.2% multiplier over 4 years and take a look at that. And so we need to make that decision before we do our submittal to the grant in late April. And so we took a deep dive into what that looks like. So we analyzed it, and the 5.2% based on revenue loss and the projections going forward, we analyzed with using conservative revenue. Here right now, right around 10.3 million, and or use this at 10. And so It's very close, and our revenues could come in different than anticipated when you're looking, 3 and 4 years out. And so the most conservative approach, looking at those two numbers, for us, our recommendation is to take that 10 million and just use that number. And so what this will do is it'll allow for a greater use, broader use of those ARPA dollars. And so if you imagine right now, all 20 million is in an ARPA bucket. This strictly can be used for ARPA projects that's listed out in the final rule. But this allows us to put it into in another bucket, the revenue replacement bucket, and those dollars can be used much more broadly. Can be used for projects that may come before the board outside that are ARPA projects. That's still very viable if there's a project that you think that meets the needs of the community. Something that meets the needs of the community outside of those ARPA guidelines could then be used as that. And also for capital improvement projects in the county of government, Bay County government. And so that was one of the big pieces of this legislation. If you listen to, the president has spoken about this, legislators have spoken about this at the federal level, these dollars are also intended as a way to, make sure you're ensuring your base of government and an investment in state and local government in a way which hasn't been afforded to state and local governments in over a generation. Oftentimes if you read legislation or articles about this, this type of investment in local government all the way back to, say, the Great Depression, right? So this is an opportunity that comes very, very, very rarely. But that's kind of the 30,000-foot view, is that right now all of the funds in one bucket, and this allows you put it in two buckets, and that second bucket can be used much more broadly in expenditures.
Thank you. That view was well explained for those that don't have the detailed knowledge. So thank you. Any questions, Mr. Coonan?
Yeah, thanks. Thanks for the explanation, Chris. I'm glad it comes by rarely, because that's part of a $31 trillion deficit we're leaving our kids. And so that $10 million that we allocate for special projects, is there no required reporting on that?
Yes, there's required reporting on the dollars that you spend as part of ARPA. And I will also say that those monies have to be spent by the completion of the grant. So they can be used much more broadly, but we still have to report out on how we spend those dollars, and they have to be spent out by the completion of the grant.
But if it's to be used more broadly, which is what you're saying,
Yeah.
does that exceed the scope of the initial ARPA dollars?
So if you think about it,
Because initially it was supposed to go to those that were impacted by the pandemic.
and so the intent is impacted by the pandemic, and not just the community at whole, but also the legislation speaks to how local government was impacted as well. And this legislation was always envisioned, when you read the initial rule, the draft rule, and the final rule, to also support local government as well. So again, it could be all spent on the ARPA projects that for the community, but you can also spend them on capital improvement projects for government, and invest in other ways too.
Mr. Begink?
So would that be buying a building or doing construction? Should we use it for any construction work, say, health department?
Yeah, all of those rules apply as how to spend the dollars, as far as like purchasing a building and retrofitting those things, yes. Yeah.
Thank you.
Anybody else? Okay, all those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carried. And lastly, item H5, the 2023 budget schedule.
Support?
Moved and supported. Any discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carried. Item 8, referrals. Okay, seeing none. Unfinished business. New business. Is there a need to go into closed session?
There is not, Madam Chair.
Miscellaneous. Mr. Barsha.
Yeah, thank you, Madam Chair. I'd just like to show the latest creation of our Department on Aging, and that is the special identification card that, with the board approval, allowed the use of our county seal. And this card is one of the Department of Aging staff, but the card issued to our residents who are 60 and better, who requested the card, carries the resident's name, address, date of birth, along with their picture, signature, and the date the card was issued. So I want to thank Beth for her tireless leadership and advocacy on behalf of our mature and retired residents of Bay County, and say that this will come in handy, especially with focus on elections and identification cards. And we know that some people that don't have access to the internet or are confused by trying to get through the website at the Secretary of State's office to have a state-issued special identification card for those that lack them. So almost just like a driver's license, but not quite, but signature, picture, and everything.
Nice. Mr. Coonan?
I like that, Jim, and instead of having folks ask for it, why don't we send each folk, it was at 55, send them a card, because we don't know who's got
60.
licenses and who doesn't have licenses, and this could, like you say, make their voting a whole lot easier. So I don't know what the plan is. I know we made a motion to use the seal, but
Yep, so what we're going to do is we're going to do a press release, get this out to our public and everything, and then we're also going to make sure that it's everywhere that I can put it, you know, come in. We really want people to make an appointment with us for this, just because it's staff doing all this work. So if we know we have 7 people coming in at this time, you know, we're ready for them and we're ready to go, and I can make sure staff are there.
do they have to be there in order to get one? You just can't mail them one?
No, we need to get their picture.
Okay.
Yep, we need to get their picture. So.
And it is kind of an official ID because of the county seal. Thanks to you, commissioners. Thanks.
Thanks, Beth.
Thank you.
Anything else? Announcements?
4. Just have one.
I do. I have
You're the
something.
only guy I'm looking at.
We're having, Craig talked about the fundraiser they have. We're going to have a bigger one, we hope, in the fall. Pawpalooza. Last year, we raised $5,000. So that's the 24th of September over at the canteen in the shelter area. So put it on your calendar.
Not me.
Anybody else?
Craig.
Oh, Craig.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Just real quickly, as Mr. Barsha talked about briefly, we had a successful event with SVSU students, and they did a tremendous job. They planned this event. This has occurred over several months, a lot of meetings, but they did a terrific job. And to raise, for college students to raise $1,000 and it's not done, there's still an administrative office that's doing some fundraising this month on campus. But much appreciated for the work that they did. And we're going to keep them involved with the planning and implementation of simple things for the cattery to improve. And so they're looking forward to seeing their hard work pay off. Additionally, this weekend from 11 to 3 at the fairgrounds, there's an Easter egg hunt. It's in partnership with Bay Animal Hospital and Humane Society, and they're having 10,000 Easter eggs in the fairgrounds. They've already had over 300 children sign up. I don't know if they're going to plan on having a map or if Buildings and Grounds employees are going to find an egg here and there throughout the summer, but 10,000 Easter eggs is a lot. So they also have food trucks and bounce house and stuff. It'll be a terrific time. So if anybody's looking for something to do this Saturday, step over.
So those are plastic eggs with yummies or something
Yes.
fun in them?
Yep. And there might be an Easter bunny there.
Maybe?
Maybe.
Nice.
Yeah.
Anybody else? Going once, going twice? Is there a motion to adjourn?
So moved.
Support.
Any discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Meeting's adjourned.